Hi, I'm Teresa Marie Lennon. Today I'd like to talk to you about the importance of prayer and meditation to improving self-esteem and making your life better. Studies have shown that people who pray tend to be happier and healthier than those who don't. It's kind of a fact. To me, it kind of proves that there is something out there, but maybe that's not proof to you. However, if you pray, you will more likely be happy and healthy. And to some degree, having good self-esteem is a sense of happiness. It's a sense of feeling good about yourself, and it's being happy in general. I guess that's part of what I'm trying to build in you guys, is happiness. Once I drove by a church and there was a sign. This church has interesting signs. It has little sayings on it that are really interesting. And one time I drove by there and it said, "Everything is spiritual." Now, I know what that means to me. It means that, I've known this ever since I was 2 years old, apparently, is that God is everywhere. Love is everywhere. Love is in everything. Love can turn bad situations around. Most places you can go, you can also find the opposite of love, which is indifference. Or, I believe the opposite of love is indifference, not hatred. Because love and hatred can coexist, but love and indifference can't really coexist. At least not directed at one person. Your spirituality is a personal thing. You can have spirituality in religion. There are lots of religious people out there that are spiritual as well. You can have spirituality outside of religion. There are a lot of spiritual people out there that are not religious. And you can have religion without spirituality. There's a lot of religious people that don't seem to have much spirituality, that are unkind and gossip and are nasty and do nasty things. And so you can have religion without spirit. Religion without the spirit is dogma. Dogma is a set of rules others have written and say that God wants us to follow. Now, sometimes these rules are good, sometimes they're bad. I firmly believe that you have to take everything that you hear and see and read with a grain of salt. You can't believe everything you read. That was one of the first things I learned as a little kid. You can't believe everything you read. Spiritual people seem to have a good idea of what are good rules and what's just dogma. I've heard it said that prayer is talking to God and meditation is listening to God. I talk to God all the time in my head. God is a good friend of mine. Jesus is a good friend of mine. The Goddess is a good friend of mine. I talk to them all the time. I talk to the Spirit. I tell them everything. Because there's no point in hiding something from someone who can see what's going on inside you anyway. God is big enough to handle my pain and my anger, so I give that to him or her. And when I found out that Jesus was a real person, I beat him up in my head a few times over the course of a week, because I was so mad about all the abuse and everything that happened, my family being so dysfunctional. I make this joke, my family put the dis in dysfunctional. Some people say so-and-so put the fun in dysfunctional, but my family put the dis in dysfunctional because there's a lot of dissing of people that go on in the family. But yeah, I beat Jesus up, and he'd walk around in my head for a few hours with a big old bruise on his cheek and on his eye and stuff. But God can handle that kind of thing. especially if other people can't. God can handle it. Now, I'm not recommending you go around being angry at God all the time. Don't get me wrong. That's not healthy either. It's good to just get it out and tell God that you're angry with Him, and God will forgive you. There's no need to earn God's love. You simply don't have to earn it. It's unconditional. Prayer is not about the rituals. It's not about the candles. It's not about the oils. It's not about the incense. It's not about even getting down on your knees. You don't have to get down on your knees to pray. It's not totally necessary. God knows and hears the prayers in our thoughts and our hearts. God knows what's going on inside of us. And prayer doesn't have to be a big thing. You can just tell God what's going on and how you'd like it fixed, or if you'd like it fixed. And try not to have any expectations, as I was talking about earlier. Because God rarely works the way that we expect Him to. And God has to work through other people a lot, and sometimes getting other people's cooperation can take time. So it isn't always just in God's time, which is usually a long time. But sometimes it's in other people's time as well, which sometimes usually takes longer than God's time. But sometimes God, when He works through other people and works with other people, He has to get cooperation, and it can take time. Sometimes God says no to prayers. But the Spirit thinks through us as well as outside of us. We are God's eyes and ears, just like the animals are. Not that somebody else has to be there for God to see you, but God thinks through us and exists through us. All life is sacred. Each person is sacred unless they throw their divinity away. Some people have thrown their divinity away. They don't care about anything. Spirituality, being spiritual, is the work of the adult life. This is something we all have to do. We all have to develop spiritually. It's a responsibility as well as a privilege to develop spiritually. Now, there's people that would argue with this, but I believe all rivers run to the sea. You just have to make sure you're on a river. There are guidelines to rivers. The rivers have banks, and you have to follow God's rules. And I believe that you can find God in pretty much all religions, except for a few of them. But I wouldn't want to. I'm not going to say which ones I think are way off base, because I wouldn't want anybody getting irate and threatening me or anything. So I just will stick with that most religions have God in them, and that there are guidelines, and that all rivers run to the sea, that you will get to heaven. Because if you go with biblical interpretation, it depends on whether or not Jesus knows you, not whether or not you know Jesus. Because God is in everybody's heads, and God talks to everybody, and some people turn their back on that person that's in there with them and keep going the other direction, and God doesn't know them. Jesus doesn't know them. But like I said, God's love is unconditional, and it doesn't matter to God or to Jesus or the goddess if you call them by the correct name or you do things exactly right. Nobody has to be perfect. Nobody has to have all the right answers. It's just not necessarily. We're all kids on this planet. To edge God out, or ego, means that we forget about God. A lot of us get too busy. We get so involved in our own lives. We start pumping ourselves up. No, I don't mean the psychological term ego, which is another word for identity. I was talking about the egotistical kind of ego. And that's not necessarily a good thing to have and to embrace. You don't want to edge God out of your life, because God will help you. Meditation is creating an inner sanctuary. It's creating a peaceful place within yourself. It's a mild, mellow mental discipline. Formal techniques of meditation are not necessary. I often meditate just sitting down comfortably. I don't feel the necessity to say mantras and do some of these other things that people do when they meditate. And I honestly believe that my meditation is just as rewarding as theirs is. And it's not wrong to do mantras and stuff. People get the same results that way. But you do need to seek the silence when you meditate, and let things flow. Let whatever happens be okay. Whatever happens should be okay with you when you're meditating. Even if your meditation gets interrupted, it's not a big deal. It's not a life or death situation. Try not to evaluate what's going on in your head. Try not to evaluate your thoughts. This is a time to let them come and go. Try not to judge your thoughts. Try to avoid being judgmental. Just relax and listen to God. God talks to us in all kinds of ways. God talks to me in all kinds of ways. I know that to be true. And I try to be listening all the time to what God is trying to tell me. God talks to me through people. God talks to me through animals. God talks to me in other ways. God talks to me inside my head sometimes. And I try to be listening to what God has to say, because God usually has important messages for me. There's so many opportunities everywhere for spiritual experiences. You can have a spiritual experience anywhere, anytime. And I try to talk or listen to God wherever I go, because God is an important person in my life. I do believe in Jesus, and I think it's important to acknowledge the people we believe in. Some people don't know that that's Jesus in their head, but they're still having a relationship. But it's good to acknowledge the person's name when we're talking to someone. And it's good to appreciate that person, I think. By the way, self-expression is divine, creativity is divine. Creativity started with the Creator. It's good to be creative, and I think if we meditate often and learn to let the little things go and not sweat the small stuff, and do things that keep us emotionally healthy, we will find our divinity and we will find our creativity. And the Creator was about creating from the beginning. So creativity is divine expression. Life is eternal. That's not something I want to argue with anybody about either. I really believe that life is eternal. And I think it's important to enjoy your relationship with the Spirit, which is love. Thank you.